Hello there, everybody. Welcome to another live episode of Dream Business Radio. It is 3:03. Tony, you're going to understand why sometimes technical difficulties. I don't know. The line didn't go all the way under the Atlantic Ocean because is it the Atlantic or I don't know. I don't know my geography.
I don't know.
But my friend Antonio is coming to us from Italy. That's right. Correct, Tony?
No, France today.
Oh, France, you are all over the place. But when we first met a couple of months ago, you said, well, I'm not from the States, so I don't celebrate Thanksgiving. I said, you're the guest for the day before Thanksgiving. Oh, goodness.
I'm constantly moving around, but today I'm in France and we don't celebrate Thanksgiving, but I've been in America and I've had a business in America for so long now that we kind of do, but no, but yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, we finally made it happen. So sorry if you've been waiting for 3 minutes for this amazing show, which I know you always are. But anyway, I am Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach. I'm the founder of the incredible Dream Business Mastermind and Coaching Program, creator of No Hassle newsletters. But most importantly, today, every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, I'm the host of Dream Business Radio. This is a weekly podcast created to help you grow your dream business. This is episode 581. And as you now know, my special guest is Antonio Garrido, and he comes all the way from France today. So, Tony, I am thrilled to have you on my program.
Jim, I'm so delighted to be here. You've had 581 episodes that have all started bang on time. Well, 580, and today's the first one that's 3 minutes late. I do apologize.
Oh, contraire, they don't all start on time. But I'm always here on time. But no, that's how rude of me to poke fun at my guests. Anyway, let me properly introduce Antonio. Wait, I forget because we met like a couple months ago. Antonio or Tony? How do you want me to refer to you?
Tonio
or Mr. or Mr. Garrido. Sir, yeah. Mr. Garrido. Okay, Antonio. We're going to have a little fun here on this pre-Thanksgiving on this side of the pond. Anyway, Antonio Garrido is the author of a wonderful book called My Daily Leadership, a powerful roadmap for leadership success. He's also the founder and president of My Daily Leadership, a leadership development organization with a mission to inspire 1 million of the world's best leaders to reach their full potential. Antonio has over 25 years in senior leadership positions with world-class businesses. He's an expert in leadership transformation, shaping high-performance leaders out of highly stressed and overworked leaders. Antonio blends his own vast commercial experience with proven techniques to embed a unique brand of leadership development. He is a serial entrepreneur like myself. He's a successful business coach like myself. He's a charismatic speaker, unlike myself, and leader from many small business startups right up to Fortune 60 companies. So, Antonio, once again, welcome to Dream Business Radio, my friend.
Thank you, Jim. What an intro. I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say.
Man, you got a lot to live up to. So, so folks, I told you, I've been pitched almost 180 times this year, and there's 6 more weeks to be on my show, which is a weekly show. So I really get to pick and choose. And, I love marketing. I love branding. I love mindset. And one of the topics I often get pitched on is leadership. So no offense to my guest, but I'm like, leadership and other. But I looked at Antonio, I looked at what he's done, his career, and I looked at the book and I said, I got to get you on. So we had a good conversation almost 2 months ago. Antonio, I want to ask you a little bit about your background first. Like, one of the things I hear from my listeners of over 10 years is that they love the backstory. Of course, they love if there's a struggle. I was very, very poor. Then I discovered the secret. Now I'm very, very rich. Not quite like that. But there's always a journey involved with achieving the success that you have. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey, if you would.
Well, thank you for that. I'll start, I'll try and keep it as succinct as possible, but I think I have to start with my dad, which I know that wasn't the question that you asked me, but my dad was, from the name Antonio Garrido, right? Or Garrido. It's not a normal Idaho name.
So there you go.
Oh, he's Spanish. My father's Spanish. My mother was Greek. But my father came from an incredibly humble and meager and poor background where he was a shepherd in rural Spain. He couldn't read or write. He never went to school, didn't know anything, but was incredibly intelligent. Anyway, what's all that got to do with the price of fish? because he was always very insistent that his kids, by the time he kind of got to the UK and kind of reached quote unquote civilization, he was insistent that his kids would, be educated, go to university, learn something, useful in his view. Having said that, although he never went to school and he couldn't read and write and all that kind of stuff, he successfully started 5 businesses, right?
Oh my goodness.
Whole family all have their own businesses. So one of the things that he used to tell me all the time when I found myself working for, leading huge companies with thousands of employees and billions in revenue. I didn't start there, by the way. I worked up there. Maybe we'll talk about the genesis of that. But we would have this running shtick, he and I. He would say, "How was your day?" And I'd say, "Terrible, I've been fired." And he would say, "Terrific," right? We kind of had this thing going on forever. And he said, and I remember this from, tiny all the way through to, university and beyond. One of the expressions that he had, and he had many, one of his favorites was, "It's better to be the head of a mouse than the tail of a lion." And what he meant by that was, start your own business, be an entrepreneur, start something, right? Make wealth, grow people, grow businesses. And it was in his blood and kind of stamped on my DNA. Anyway, when I first came out of university, I flew in the face of all of that because I was an architect, right? I didn't want to do any of that stuff. I just kind of wanted to be an architect for the bizarre and vain and foolish belief that all I would do would be design cathedrals and museums and hotels and huge, great, monoliths and, leave my indelible mark on the face of the earth for the rest of eternity. What ended up happening, I was doing lots of kitchen extensions for Mrs. Miggins and so on, right?
Mrs. Higgins' kitchen. I was wondering who did that.
Yeah. So I was kind of, I came out of university wanting to be an architect. I'm being slightly disingenuous because I did design a couple of buildings that won awards. But anyway, that notwithstanding, what then happened was I was recruited by an individual. Well, I was recruited by an organization, but the leader of that business saw something in me. It may be that he saw that I was a fairly dreadful architect, right? But he saw something in me that he kept encouraging me to learn about leadership, learn about management, learn about business growth, learn about, he said, I'd been working for him for a couple of years, and he said, he wanted me to go back to university to do an MBA in strategic business management, that kind of thing.
Right.
So now I look back, I was thinking, was he telling me I was a poor architect? But what he actually was one of the most inspirational, phenomenal leaders I worked for, by look than by design. And I learned so much from him, and he kept giving me, bigger and bigger and bigger divisions, and then organizations, and then kind of countries to run, and for the organization. So he was my start into leadership, and then again, more by look.
So Tony, I'm going to interrupt you just real quick. I just need to let you know, I have about 12 questions to ask you in this half-hour format.
Okay, so
I'm kidding you.
Okay, here we go. 15 seconds. So I found myself working for I would genuinely now, I can say it quite categorically, world-class leaders, right? Very inspirational, very well developed, high emotional intelligence leaders. And to the extent that I eventually, my wife and I decided, for reasons that we don't have time to talk about, to go to Miami and start a business. So we went to Miami, started our own business, grew that into the 3rd biggest kind of sales and business development company in the world. And then I wrote a couple of books for them. Then I wrote this book, and then we started another business, and that's how we are here today, Jim. Normally that takes me about 45 minutes to answer that question. There you go. I hope that was useful.
No, it is very useful, because I heard in that 42-minute eloquent answer you just I heard that you first of all, humble beginnings and your dad. And one of the things I definitely picked up on was your dad encouraged you to pursue entrepreneurship.
100%.
So many, so many people that I've interviewed, it's like, no, go to university or college, whatever, and become a CPA. Some people become attorneys, some people do other things, and then the entrepreneurial bug kind of bites them later in their life. But you had that seed planted. And the other thing I picked up on was very early in your career, somebody was encouraging you to pursue leadership, which ended up being a big part of your life, maybe a little bit further down the road, and now the book and everything else. In doing my research for the interview, I read somewhere, I think it was in one of your blog posts, that developing a leader's #1 resource is called action bias. In 2 or 3 minutes, what is action bias?
Yeah, 2, 3. Yeah, I heard that. 2 or 3
You like my little prompt?
Yeah, good. Okay, I heard that. There is nothing in this world, I think, as over rewarded as planning and under rewarded as doing. Right? We can all kind of create a plan for something, right? How do I lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks for the wedding? How do I do this? How do I do that? You ask 100 people, they give you 100 different plans, and they're all really, really good plans. What's the difference between those that succeed and those that don't? Is those that succeed actually do something, right? You can't think your way to greatness. So one of the things that we talk about all of the time when we're coaching our leaders and when we're kind of encouraging businesses to grow and so on, is just make an imperfect start. Start and course correct on the way. When I was learning how to fly, right, a million years ago, if you were kind of taking off from one airport and going to another airport, you don't just take off and go on a bearing of, heading of 273 and land 2 hours later and hope you're in the airport, right? You course correct along the way 1,000 times, right? And you're perfectly okay with that. You have a plan, which is the flight plan or the business plan, and you just make an imperfect start knowing you're going to have to course correct. So many people are frozen, analysis paralysis and all that kind of stuff. And we just say, look, make an imperfect start, but start, right? Inertia will catch you up. Course correct, learn along the way. You fail, that's fine. Like Mario Andretti, if you're not terrified going around the corners, you're not going fast enough, right? So it's make sure you're making sensible decisions and decisions based on kind of tools and models and so on. But just make a start and go for it. So many people are waiting for the perfect moment, for the perfect opportunity, for the perfect environment, for the perfect economy, it's never going to happen. Make a start. Action bias.
Awesome. I almost hesitate to say this, but something switched up on your audio. Like your audio got louder, and I can now hear myself in an echo. But we're gonna pull through. I don't know if you're on an external mic and it got unplugged or something. But let's talk about the 6 C's of alignment, from conversion to collaboration.
Well, from conversation. Here's the thing, right? And if you want to do some extra reading around this, there's a tremendous article, I think it was in Forbes, and it was, just Google the man who saved Lego, right? So Lego, everybody loves Lego, right? But Lego was an organization that was under terrible stress, and it was probably months from collapse. Nobody kind of realizes that, right? We think Lego's been going for 80, 100 years, something like that. And it's a tremendous business. Well, it is a tremendous business now, but there was a chap that saved Lego. And he had this belief that collaboration is what it's all about, right? And he introduced this principle of collaboration into an organization. Here's what happens. Most businesses, everyone gets on, they can have a conversation with each other and they communicate. How are you today? What's going on, right? That's kind of the first C, communication. Well, communication will get you so far. What we then need to do as the business is growing in, let's say, sophistication, the task is growing in importance, right? We've got to go from communication to coordination. You do this, and I'll do that. And we have lots of managers coordinating things. That's okay, but that's only going to take you so far. And as you move up and up and up and up till you get to cooperation, where you get to consensus, but the pinnacle of all these things is collaboration. Those companies that can engender a culture of collaboration where they share resources, they share goals. I was talking to another client of ours just this week, and we were talking about EBITDA. So many companies, focus on the KPIs, on the key performance indicators, whatever the metrics are that they're looking after, EBITDA, for example. And I was speaking to the CEO just this week, and I said, look, if you don't think that EBITDA is a collaborative goal, you're crazy. If you just think it's a cooperative goal where everyone just kind of cooperates to get on with things, you're crazy. So we talk about collaboration so importantly, where everybody asks, how can I help? Where everybody means it, where collaboration is actually an agenda item in the board meetings and in the weekly management meetings and so on. How are we collaborating? If your audience and listeners, if they're paying attention, if you can figure out how to make your organization collaborative, then you'll absolutely crack it, because it means sharing resources as well as targets.
Which is clearly one of the main things you need to do as the leader, right? You need to possibly even introduce the topic of collaboration. So many people are just, kind of whack-a-mole. They're putting their head down, looking out for themselves.
Yeah, and if it's not in your core values, and remember, every leader, every organization should hire and fire and promote to core values. If it's not part of your core values, figure out how to make collaboration part of your core values, and you'll see your company fly. You really.
Yeah. I forget who said it, but let me think about it. Well, actually, President Ronald Reagan years ago had a saying on his desk. It's amazing what I don't know if it was Winston Churchill, but it's amazing what you can accomplish when it doesn't matter who gets the credit, which I think speaks to collaboration, right? So
it really does. Do you want me to give you an example of collaboration? Or
sure. Yes, go ahead.
So I was working for an organization, and the CEO said to me, to the board, that we have to get more collaborative. And over about an 18-month period, I saw the whole company evolve. It took a step change in growth and success when it kind of embraced this principle of collaboration. And here's the first time I saw it. I told this story a million times, and I have now seen it happen a million more times. We were working for the company. The company was struggling a little, down. Marketing was struggling. The business was behind. Things were a bit tricky. The logistics director, in the middle of a board meeting, said, do you know what? We're a little bit quiet at the moment because sales are down, right? Because we've got targets and all that. I get it. He says, I kind of got about eight guys at the moment who are nowhere near as loaded as they normally are. Oh, loaded for logistics, right? Loading vans. They're not as busy as they normally are. And he said to the sales, VP of sales, CRO, let me give you 8 of my guys. What could you do with 8 of my guys for 6 months, right? If I gave you 8 heads,
interesting.
How could you utilize them? This is a guy who's giving resources outside of his own, but everyone had their own budget line and all of that kind of stuff. And he said, let me give you 8 guys for 6 months. How could you utilize them? And I was there at the board table when I saw all the light bulbs go off, and then there was a million of those thereafter, and the company just took
That's
off.
A great story. I read somewhere, I think it was in your book, about leadership journaling. What do you, is that just journaling, or is there a specific way to do that as a leader?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, that we want all of our leaders to grow and develop and improve and all of that kind of stuff, including, I think we just mentioned earlier, very, very slightly, emotional intelligence and all of those kind of things. Well, those things don't happen by magic or by osmosis, right? You'll see a leader and you'll say, how long have you been a leader? And they'll say, 15 years and then you dig into it, and what you actually discover is they kind of learned and grew for the first 2 years, and then they did rinse and repeat, 6 or 7 times, right? And they plateaued and stopped growing. I had another boss that said to me, The only advantage you have today over yesterday is what you've learned, because otherwise you're just a day closer to dead. And it's a bit grisly, I'll give you, right? But the principle that unless you're very intentional about what you're learning, and very intentional about where you're growing and developing, then you're missing out on in so many different ways. Just before COVID struck, I was giving a talk to 400 or 500 leaders from around the world, lots of different sizes, different markets, verticals and all that. And I said, hey, who here, by a show of hands of all of these leaders, who does not have any blind spots, who has no leadership blind spots? Now, thankfully, good self-awareness, nobody put their hands up. In other words, everybody recognized,
right,
have some leadership blind spots. Terrific, said I. If everybody could just take a moment and write down what they are, right? Now, here's the thing. Nobody could do that, because if they knew what they were, then they wouldn't be blind spots, but because they're blind spots, they don't know what they are, QED, right? So what we say is, look, let's be intentional about what we learn, how we're trying to develop. Let's try and grow. Normally, the areas that we need to grow, I'd like the majority of the time, are the areas that we don't want to grow in, right? If you say to leaders, hey, what do you think, where do you think your weaknesses might lie? They'll say something slightly puerile and slightly flaccid and just maybe I could improve in here, maybe improve in there. Really what they're saying is, because we know, Jim, and I know, your audience knows that the magic happens outside your comfort zone, right? So
right.
That there's no comfort in your growth zone and there's no growth in your comfort zone, right? So when we ask leaders, where do you need help? They're going to say something that's just kind of a little bit, woolly. So we say, look, take an assessment. It doesn't have to be ours is tremendous, but take an assessment, figure out where your blind spots are, figure out where you need to grow, right? Specifically in areas of people development, company development, self-development, strategy development, and leadership development. Figure those out. And now let's start recording those things. So this comes back to our journal. It comes back to every day you need to say to yourself, what would my report card look like for today? Was every conversation, every interaction, every email, every suggestion, every coaching session, was I perfect? Well, no, of course not, right? So your daily leadership report card, if it's not an A+ every day, and it isn't, then that forces you to go, okay, well, if it's not an A+, it was probably an A- or a B+. That then kind of requires, well, then what could I have done more of or less of? What should I have said? What shouldn't I have said, right? Looking back, how could I have done? And that retrospective consideration of your own performance, these are the kinds of things that we write in our leadership journal. So people normally say, when we say start to journal, they say, well, I don't know what to write and how much to write and when do I write and all that kind of stuff. Well, we're going to just go to our website, free download, and just make an imperfect start. Just start. Action bias.
We got about 5 minutes left. I want to talk to you about mindset. I was happy to see you address that in the book. And you talk about how a lot of people tend to hold negative beliefs that will, as you and I know, if you hold negative thoughts, negative beliefs, you're going to attract negative results. So how can leaders overcome holding negative thoughts, such as maybe even imposter syndrome?
Yeah, for sure. Now, depending on which piece of research you read, most people have somewhere between 60 and 70,000 thoughts a day. Most of them, somewhere between 70 and 80%, are negative, right? And we kind of go into these doom loops and we think the same thing again and again and again and again. And that's kind of how, I get it. It's how our lizard brain has kept us safe for millions of years. I get that. Blueberries are good. We're not sure about red berries. Leave the red berries, steer wide of the red berries, right? So there's a lot of research for why that might be. So how can we hope to have a positive life if it's filled with negative thoughts? So let's come back to beliefs, as you mentioned, Jim. Where do beliefs come from? We're not born with them, like stamped on our DNA. We've learned them. We have learned these beliefs. Everything that you believe, everything that I believe, everything that everybody believes, we have learned. What is a belief? Well, a belief is just something that we hold to be true. It doesn't mean it's necessarily true. It's just something you believe. I think it was Mark Twain that said, what really gets us into trouble, I'm paraphrasing, so I can't think of the exact words, but what really gets us into trouble are those things that we absolutely know to be true, which absolutely aren't, right? It's something like that, right? So, okay, here's the thing about beliefs. We've learned them, which means we can unlearn them. And it comes back to this recognizing what the problem is. So let's imagine we have a salesperson, right? I know we're short for time, but I'll just make it super quick. You may have some salespeople listening, right? Mm-hmm. If you believe, just write, like north, south, east, and west, write BEAR, B-E-A-R, north, east, south, west. Like around the compass, like 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Write BEAR, B-E-A-R. So BEAR, B-E-A-R. So B is beliefs at 12 o'clock. If you believe as a salesperson, if you believe that cold calling is rubbish, cold calling is a waste of time, and if anybody cold calls you, you just slam down the phone and cold calling is rubbish. If you believe that cold calling is a waste of time, let's have a look at 3 o'clock, the E. What would you expect to happen, Jim, in the time if your manager says, hey, I need you to make 20 cold calls a day? If you believe that cold calling is rubbish, what do you expect to happen? Waste of time, right?
That's right. You're not going to make them.
Your expectation is there's going to be a waste of time. So what are your actions like at the 6 o'clock now? What will your actions be? They'll be poor, right? They won't be fully committed. They won't be fully engaged. They'll be weak and half-hearted at best. So now we'll go to the 9 o'clock. So what will the results look like? The results will be terrible. So you expect, it's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe something is terrible, you expect bad things to happen. So your actions are poor, the results are poor, and it just goes around and feeds back into your beliefs, right? And you just kind of go down this doom loop. Henry Ford said, if you think you can or you can't, you're right. So let's work on our beliefs. Where would we do that? We do that in our journal. Everybody has some self-limiting beliefs. Take an assessment, talk to your wife, talk to your husband, they'll tell you, right? So start thinking about which beliefs are holding you back. So let's say imposter syndrome, for example. If you think, I'm not so sure about this, people won't take me credibly, guess what? You will be unsure. People won't take you credibly, right? So we have to fix those self-limiting beliefs that are holding us back. So figure out what they are and then start journaling about, just kind of start with act as if, right? What would a leader that believed this way, how would they respond? How would they start to understand, get a picture of the leader that you want to be, and then let's make an imperfect start. Let's start moving that in that direction.
That's awesome. Antonio, how can people connect with you and learn more from you? Where do you want them to get your book? And I think you mentioned a free download at your website. So wrap all that up for us.
Yeah, there's loads of free downloads on our website, including, chapters and all that kind of stuff. And wherever you get your books, right? So Amazon, paper, electronic, audio. I narrated it. I narrated this one. I didn't narrate my first two, but I'll do this one. I did this one and future ones. So just go to all the W's. .mydailyleadership.com. So My Daily Leadership is just kind of behind me here. So www.mydailyleadership.com. Loads of free resources on there. But email me, Antonio@mydailyleadership.com. I promise, if you just say Captain Jim Palmer or whatever, one of my people will get it to me, and I will, even at Thanksgiving, I'll get back to you, I promise, within 72 hours. So if you've got any questions, anything you want, just anything, like, what did you mean when you said, this is all I do for a living.
That was great. I'm glad they finally repaired the cable that the submarine broke from between here and France, so we could connect with each other. Thank you so much, Antonio. This was a fun interview. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jim. See you, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, folks, that wraps up this very special interview with Antonio Garrido. You can connect with him at mydailyleadership.com. You can connect with me at getjimpalmer.com. And again, if you're interested in joining me and about 25 other very smart entrepreneurs in my Dream Business Mastermind and Coaching Program, you can go to dreambizcoaching.com, dreambiz coaching.com. This interview will be replaying on my YouTube channel starting tomorrow. That's always a good place to share it. Remember, you can get free digital copies of all 6 of my Dream Business books at Amazon as Kindle. They're Nook books at Barnes & Noble. They're also in the iBook store. I also want to encourage you to get a free copy of my report, How to Create Multiple Streams of Revenue. This is by far my most popular ebook that I put out this year. It's exactly how I went from 1 business in 2003 to like 7 in 2009. I think I'm down to 3 right now. But this is exactly how I went and created multiple revenue streams. It is the #1 way you can get a big, healthy income, is to have multiple streams of revenue. But that's it. Until this time next week, I am Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach. To all the people in the States, happy Thanksgiving. If you're hearing this on replay, I hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. I'm Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach, and you take good care.
See ya.